Welcome back, everybody. We've got the Boss GM-800 on the bench today. This is their latest guitar synthesizer. There's been quite a bit of buzz about it, and rightfully so. There's a new GK5 pickup and a new cable, so no more 13-pin cables, which was a bit of clunk that I think probably put a lot of people off using the GK-equipped stuff. So there's going to be people coming at this video from the perspective of they're just curious about this unit and they've never used a guitar synth before, and there's going to be a bunch of veterans of the 13-pin years who are going to be curious about what this actually sounds like. So I'm going to break the video up into a few sections. First, I'm going to solo over a synthwave track that I made, playing saxophone on my guitar, living out my absolute 80s fantasies. Then we're going to hear some of the stock sounds. I will build a patch from scratch. I'll show you some of the guitar to Midi capabilities on this. And then we'll probably wrap it up because I think I'm actually going to have to do a series of videos about this particular unit. There's so much going on. I will say that this is a synth first, and you use the guitar to control the synth. It's not something that's going to be super guitar player friendly if you're not used to playing a guitar synthesizer before. I'll say straight up, if you just want to plug your standard guitar cable into something and get some cool synth style sounds and you just want to have a bit of fun, something like the Boss SY1 or the SY200 is going to be more up your alley. But if you're somebody who wants to be able to do true polyphonic, guitar-controlled synthesizer stuff, you're going to be pretty impressed by this. Let's go. For this part of the video, I just want to show you some of my favorite factory sounds in here. I've got Tone Studio for the GM-800 open, so you can see what each patch consists of. Essentially, you've got 4 different instrument sounds per patch. They're called parts in here. There are various controls per part, like the level, the panning, the tuning, whether you have different parts sent to the chorus and delay, or the reverb and the individual effects in there. I'm just going to play through the sounds on this one. I might disable a few parts so you can kind of see how some of them are made, but we will build a patch from scratch later in the video, and I'll go into some different sounds, how we would layer parts, and how we would go about applying effects. There's also a master section up here, a control and assign section, and then you can set up guitar to Midi. So I'll also show you some stuff later where I'm using the GM-800 to convert my guitar signal to Midi, and then I'll be playing my ASM Hydra synth with my guitar. Just keep in mind with this, there are some real particular articulations you have to get used to with guitar synthesizers because they're kind of a synthesizer first. You know, you're using the guitar to control the synth. So there'll be a lot of like playing a chord and then gently releasing the touch on it so you can mute it much in the same way you would press and release a key on a keyboard style instrument. Anyway, let's just hear Sweep Strings at the stock settings. This one is pretty epic. I think it's a good first patch. create a scene from scratch now, as you can see in the editor, the default scene just has the acoustic piano loaded into each part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a sound that I like for this one part. I'll add some effects to it. Then we can do fun things like add another part and only assign it, say, to the low strings or the high strings, play around with guitar to Midi to trigger other instruments, and generally have a pretty fun time. So the acoustic piano sound at stock settings with no effects. Sounds totally fine, but I'm a sucker for big old school synth string pads. So let's go to Tone Browse. I've got all the different categories over here. Let's go to say Synth Pad, and I'm gonna go for just the string sound. So I'll filter these ones out over here, and there is a pretty massive selection over here. So we've got JP soft strings, OB bright strings, JP6 pad, GR700 pad. All the way down here, we've got these synth strings, we've got sweeps. Let's go for Jupiter 8 strings number 1 and just have a listen to that at the stock settings. Immediately having a good time with that one. If I wanted to edit the sounds though, I can hit edit as you would expect, and I can change up the same basic controls in here. So the level of the part, where it's panned, the sends to the chorus or delay, and reverb over here. This control here is going to control which effects I process this with. So I can have 1 or 2 and I can route them in series or parallel. I can also mute the parts as well and assign that to a foot switch on here. But you've also got this tone modify section in here. So if I didn't like that was a super slow attack on there, I can bring the attack down and get something which is going to be a bit more immediate. Also add some vibrato. For example, if I was using a sax sound like in the intro, I can change up the vibrato properties on there. I can add a delay to the vibrato. I've also got some filters in here. So if I wanted that to be a little brighter and I wanted to add some resonance to it, maybe let's bring the attack back that way. Play around with the decay and the release. Pretty standard synth controls, but they're all available in there per part, which is worth noting. Let's keep rolling with this particular part. I want to add some effects to it. So I can go to the multi-effects section in here, and you can see there's already a delay on that sound. Maybe let's try a slightly different delay. We've got the 2-tap delay, the 3-tap pan delay, the 4-tap pan delay, the multi-tap delay in here. The effect selection is pretty amazing, but I'm going to go to a different category over here. Let's go to chorus, and if we look at the different types, you've got standard chorus, but you've also got stuff like the Space D, you've got the SDD 320, you've got the Juno chorus in here, and these are signature Roland effects, which actually aren't in the GT1000. The GT1000 is kind of the only flagship guitar modeler that doesn't have a Roland dimension effect, which kind of doesn't make sense to me, but it's awesome that it's in here. I would still love to see it in the GT series, but let's put the Juno chorus on top of that. We can have different modes. We can add some noise in there. Let's just have a listen to what that does for us. That is a source right there. I really like the way that sounds on this string pad. We can assign which string is going to use this particular sound. So maybe I'll leave it off string 6 and string 5, and we'll add a different part just for those low tones in there. So if I go to play the 6th string now, I get nothing on there. So that one is turned off. You can even play around with things like the tuning on here if you just want to transpose the sounds. Then we've got this others section over here where you can set whether you've got monophonic or polyphonic play mode on here. The mono mode is really handy if you're playing kind of solo instruments or leads. You've got a legato switch, portamento time, and various other kind of typical synth style functions on there. So next, let's add, say, a bass part to this. So I'm going to go to Tone Browse over here, and let's have Synth Bass. So I'm going to go for, I want like a big, dirty, old school kind of detuned saw wave thing. So let's have a look at what we've got. We've got a lot of choices in here, and you could just kind of sit here and scroll, which is a very kind of synth style thing to do. I'm going to go for this 101 saw bass over here, and I'm only going to assign it, let's actually turn it on. I'll just assign it to the low 2 strings over here, so I will turn it off for these other ones over here. So we get this. Not super into that, so I've chosen this wobble bass, which now gives me this. That's pretty cool, and you could see there I was playing the bass part down low, and it's just the bass part, and I got the strings on the top strings. I'm going to turn the bass part off for now because I want to process the strings part with some reverb and some delay. So I've got these dedicated chorus or delay sections and reverb sections. I've also got 2 effects sections that I can process anything with as well. So let's go to the reverb, and we have a lot of different choices, kind of similar to the chorus choices in there. There is a really expansive set of signature Roland effects. We've got the SRV 2000. There's the Integra 7 reverbs up here. There's gated reverbs. Let's go with the Integra 7. I'm going to go for like a big reverb. Let's go something like 6 seconds on here. I'm going to crank the level up. We'll just go with Hall number 1 over there. And then I can send this particular part to the reverb. So let's do that and just have a listen to what that sounds like. Next up, let's add some delay in here. This one's currently set to be a chorus, but I already had the Juno chorus on there. So let's go with something like the 3-tap delay. I can have all of these synced to the tempo as well and pan them around and have a pretty good time in there. I can also choose to send the delay to the reverb as well. So let's just bring in a little bit of this delay as well. Oh, that is greasy. I really, really like that. So each section can have its own multi-effects assigned to it, and each section can be separately bussed to the delay and reverb, but then you've also got 2 more effects sections, and you can choose how to process each part through those. So let's look at effects number 1. It's currently set to nothing, but we've got a bunch of different categories in here. So let's do this. Let's go with compressor limiter, and let's choose a mid-side compressor over here. I'll just go with the stock settings over there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run just the wobble bass through that. So wobble bass is not going through the reverb or delay, but we'll route it through effects 1 and effects 2. So let's just bypass effects 1 so we can hear the difference. Effects 2, let's add one of these lo-fi style effects in here. So again, you've got a bunch of fun functions like modulation. There's pitch effects. So I could come in here if I wanted to. I could add some big greasy detune to that, but there's some really fun lo-fi effects in here. So lo-fi compressors, there's a phonograph in there. Let's actually just process the JP8 through that as well. So we get this. That's super vibey. I'm really enjoying that. I'll just turn the phonograph off for now because it's adding quite a bit of noise. Let's just layer 2 more parts on there, and I won't worry about splitting these up too much. I'll go to Tone Browse. I wouldn't mind like a kind of bell or something like that. So let's go with a good old D50 Fantasia pad. And then for another part, I mean, we could add some kind of pulsing thing or a slicer style effect. Let's go to pulsating, and let's go with, I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of options in here, so this video isn't really going to do all the selections justice, but I'm just going to go with soft pulse pad over here, and I'll let you hear each of these new parts in isolation. So we get this. There's some character in there, which I really like. I feel like so many of the older synth style products, they gave you all the cheese, but you couldn't really kind of get that like analog style character out of it. And maybe the sounds were a bit limited. Maybe I just didn't know what I was doing, or I didn't play them long enough. But that kind of feels like you're playing a modern synthesizer with all of the added benefits in there. You know, I love my Hydra, and I love the cool character tones you can get out of it. So that's doing it right there. The sax sound that I used for the intro solo was pretty straightforward. It's just the baritone sax, pretty much the stock settings, but I did add some big reverb in there. So the SRV 2000 with 6 seconds of reverb. I used one of the SDD 320, so mode 3s on there, which is my favorite on the real unit. I'm pretty sure as well there's a multi-tap delay in the multi-effects. Nope, just the sustainer in there. So the baritone sax attack, that's what I use for that. I'll let you hear it on its own. And there's also a trumpet sound that I quite enjoyed as well. Anyway, that's how you would go about building sounds. One really cool feature of this, though, is that it does guitar to MIDI as well. So that intro solo kind of sax style thing, I had guitar to MIDI on, pretty easy to do from the editor and from the hardware as well. And I basically just took the USB cable, recorded a MIDI track in there, and then I used a synth plugin to essentially reamp it, or re-synth it, so that I could have the same take with a different sound. So I'll play that for you. Then I'm going to give you some examples of using the guitar to MIDI with a MIDI cable to my ASM Hydra synth. So basically all I had to do was turn guitar to MIDI on, plug the MIDI cable in, and it worked, which is really nice, especially if you're kind of used to all the pain that sometimes goes into getting these things to talk to one another. So you will hear the same intro solo with a different sound due to guitar to MIDI. Then I'm going to play around with the Hydra with my guitar, which is pretty awesome because I'm very familiar with that particular unit. And this was like a whole new experience with it. I'll also play the keys and play the guitar so you can hear the same sounds. Let's do that. So far, we've just basically been focusing on the actual functions and the sounds and how to do things. What I want to give you an example of is how I would personally use something like this to actually play music live with. So I'm going to go through a section of a ragdoll song called Shine, and with all the synth stuff turned off, this is the guitar part. Now, normally we play in drop C. This guitar I've put into drop D. You can actually go into the unit and select the tuning you're using so the GK will track everything correctly. But here's the ending guitar part. I could layer that with this Marcato string, so I'll turn both of those on, and again we'll hear it with the actual guitar in there. There's a few parts of other ragdoll songs where I basically just play some open chords for a verse. So we have a song called The Last Time where this is the verse guitar part. It's not that interesting on its own, but you know, it works in the context of the song. I could layer like a synth string pad underneath it just to give it a bit of extra spice. Like I said at the start of the video, so much stuff that I haven't had a chance to cover. There's the whole Xenology cloud thing going on as well. So you can use the Roland cloud. You do require a membership, and there's various tiers of membership, but you can create sounds using the plugin and using the cloud and then load them into this. I haven't even had a chance to do that just yet. So I'll do a follow-up video about that. What I want to know is, what do you want to hear out of this thing? I'm kind of swamped by how much this can do. For me, I've really been enjoying just playing around with a bunch of pads and kind of synth style sounds because that's what I like out of things like my ASM Hydra. But I know a bunch of people out there have been using 13-pin stuff and various Boss or Roland guitar synthesizers for years. So do you want to know how to use the pianos or what they sound like, or how to use the Xenology cloud to get sounds in there? Do you want a video that's maybe an introduction to guitar synthesizers for people who've never used them before? Because like I said earlier in the video, there's a bunch of articulations you kind of have to get used to, and I'm still kind of struggling with that. You know, there's a lot of things that I'll play that feel really natural on guitar that wouldn't really translate if you were playing a keyboard instrument. So you do have to change the way you play to get the most out of this. Again, if you're experienced with this, I think you're gonna love it. They're the best sounds that I have heard by quite a mile out of like a Boss or Roland PCM-based guitar synthesizer. The one thing that I wish it had was all the kind of alternate tuning and instrument modeling that the SY-1000 has on there. So I'm gonna be pretty curious. I would actually really like a unit that does all the alternate tuning and instrument modeling from the SY-1000 in this format using the new GK5, like a box maybe the size of one of their 200 series pedals, where you can just use it to do alternate tunings. You can use it to grab some different instrument sounds. You know, the Vio guitar I kind of missed in here. I really like that sound, but yeah, so much to get through. It's a pretty heady unit in there. I would also say go and watch the Alex Hutching videos on this, because Alex is not only a phenomenal electric guitar player, Alex is a seasoned guitar synth player as well. And the sounds Alex is pulling and the way they play, I think, is just pretty amazing. So if you haven't seen those videos yet, go and watch them because it's god tier stuff. And otherwise, thanks for watching me noodle around on this, fumble around on, try to make some sounds. Let me know what you want to hear in the future. Thank you to Ed and the team at Boss here in Australia for getting me early access to this. I'll do a bunch more videos on it and some tutorials as well. So if you like what I'm doing, check the video description. You can sign up to my Patreon. You can get that backing track. You can buy some music that I make with my band Ragdoll as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.